And what was your family like?
I was born in Salem, Oregon, of a pioneer family, and they were very proud of that.
What do you mean by pioneer family?
We came over across the Oregon Trail from
Oh.
Illinois in the 1800s,
Do you have any
and
artifacts that they brought over or anything like that?
oh, they had all kinds of things that they brought with them, and some things that I wondered why on earth we had them around. And then when I heard the stories, it gives it perspective and sets it in some kind of a timeline. So
Sure does. Yeah,
pretty cool.
I find that all very interesting. The
Mhm.
Oregon Trail and what people tried to bring with them, and
Yes.
some succeeded and some did not.
Yeah.
But your family did succeed. And I wanted to ask you about your mother, particularly because when I looked into your book, I saw a photograph, I think was your mother. It was called the 12 o'clock.
Oh, the 12 o'clock girl. Yeah.
Tell me about her.
Um, well, she started taking dancing lessons when she was still in school, in high school, and just fell in love with the entertainment world. And was actually on the road when she was 16 with a group, and traveled the world with it. And
Wow.
she's very, I don't know, future looking kind of woman, and loved the entertainment world, and she was good at it.
Sounds like she was very creative and very flexible because in the photograph I saw, she has one leg straight up and one down. So that's the 12 o'clock pose. And I would imagine you have a lot of photographs like this of her.
Yeah, I don't have the flexibility, however.
I wish I had some of that myself. Well, that's a great photograph. And I'm sure that her creativity and her flair had a lot of influence on you growing up.
Yeah, she was always up to something. She was real active in the county fairs, and she was also a painter, so she had
Oh,
her paintings set up too. I remember one time my social studies teacher said, "Well, where's your painting, Jane?" I said, "Oh, I don't paint." And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "My mother paints. I don't paint." And
ah,
so I was very conscious of that division in our skills and interests. And if my mother claimed it, that it was hers, as far as I was concerned.
and you had brothers and sisters too?
I had a brother who was 5 years younger than I.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Okay.
he was quite an accomplished musician. And
On piano or
um, he played the organ
organ?
as well as flute, the recorder.
Uh-huh.
And he was always up to something.
Are you musically inclined as well?
I love music,
Yeah.
period.
I love to hear it, right?
Right, right. I like to hear it, yeah. And I can hear it when there's a mistake. And
Oh.
I hate it when it's me making the mistake. So I don't perform.
Yeah.
Although I've been in a singing group off and on most of my life.
Oh, good, good. Here in town, huh? A singing
There's
group.
one here in town, and there have been others.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering, I know a little bit about your timeline, but I'm wondering what your first aspirations in life were. And, basically, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a writer.
Ah, great. You wanted to do novels or
Oh yeah, I had
novels?
girlfriends that we used to do sketches with our novels, and we had quite a round robin going with that.
Did you
I don't
have
know that.
any?
Well, one of our crowd did get published writing novels, but
Somebody did get published,
did
huh?
I have any?
Did you have certain authors that you liked when you were younger that influenced you?
I'm sorry to say that I was not very ambitious. I liked uh, I like adventure stories, I liked the stories where there were strong women doing
Yes.
interesting, challenging things. And I didn't have much patience for people who sort of contributed to their own downfall, or bad things happening to them. I just, just irritated me. So
I know exactly what you mean. I've always been looking for that strong female lead who does not contribute to her own downfall.
yeah.
Well, what would you say are some of the main turning points in your life?
You mean turning points?
Turning points.
Oh,
So when you look at your life as a whole, what would you say are some of the turning points in it?
well, in January 8th, 1985, I made a commitment to stop drinking. That was a turning point.
Ah,
And that was when I really discovered that you can do something about that,
mhm,
when that's
mhm.
drinking is not working for you anymore,
Yeah,
that was the
yeah,
turning point for me. And I
that's a
discovered
big
that
one. That's a big
it
one.
was, it was something that was very different in my family because there are many alcoholics in my family and
Mhm.
not too many that have quit.
Yeah.
It's a real shame because, I have a lot of brilliant people in my family, but you can be brilliant and not too smart.
Did you have a lot of strength? I mean, it must have taken some strength to finally say no, whereas the rest of the family did not say no. I mean, you had some sort of inner strength that rose up there.
Well, I have to just credit the AA program because that's what taught me, here's how you do this, here's how you do that, here's the next step, here's the next step. Just take it a step at a time,
Yeah.
keep breathing. you know,
Yes.
I could see other people who'd gone before me and who are willing to help. And, it was that kind of structure and pathway of success that gave me uh, faith and hope that that could happen for me too.
I applaud you for that and also speaking about it because it's inspirational to other people who might be listening in here. How about other turning points?
Hmm. Well, I think one of the turning points was committing myself to the doctoral program.
Hmm.
That's something that I had never ever considered doing, but um, I was involved in a school district that was going through the change from a traditional middle school to well, I guess, no, it's traditional junior high to a middle school.
Uh-huh.
It's a very different kind of orientation, and it was very difficult for the teachers, and they ended up going through a whole recertification program and having them teach one another some of the skills and strategies that they might not have known. I mean, they were like they would go from being, a specialist in math, for example, to being expected to be a specialist in children
Uh-huh.
and how they were doing and how they were feeling and how they could, reconstruct their world for themselves. And it was just a very different way of looking at the world. And,
Hmm.
teachers who have been accustomed to being specialists in their field now all of a sudden uh, were not certain about what they were supposed to be doing and how they're supposed to be doing it.
I see what you
So
mean.
it was a very difficult time for them. And I kept thinking there must have been an easier way to do this. And I thought, well, I knew about these people at the University of Oregon who were studying organizational development. And I thought, that's what I need to know about. And so I got into the doctoral program with them, and that again changed my life because I never ever thought I'd have a doctorate, for heaven's sakes.
So the
Uh,
PhD, is it in education?
yes,
Education.
yeah, in curriculum and development. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And then you served as a school principal. Was that at the same school or a different school
Um,
that you mentioned before?
Actually, it ended up in the same school.
Same school.
Yeah.
Wow. And did you have any insights from being a principal?
I have lots of insights about being a principal.
Could you
I
tell
don't
us a
know how
few?
anyone, I don't know how anyone manages to be a principal without a 12-step program.
Oh,
Because you learn about things like don't take it personally, take it a step at a time, keep breathing. There's just lots and lots of mottos and sayings that really help you, keep your balance and keep going straight forward. So I was really grateful for that.
Yeah, so it was a good venue to practice
Yes,
those
yeah,
what I would think of as precepts, but they're steps that
yeah,
in AA. But you
yeah.
practiced them where
Yes,
you were. They came in handy.
because that was the only way you knew to survive.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. It's great to know how you did that. But you had that determination and the structure to do it,
And the nice thing was having the support too, you
and the
know.
support from all the other people. Yes,
Mhm.
all the other people. You've been attending the Center for Sacred Sciences for a long time. I've seen you there, um,
Yeah.
and a lot of the Sunday talks. And I wonder how you first came to know about the center.
Well, one of the members, who is a friend, he was the son of a friend of mine, was going there and told me about it, you know, and I was very intrigued about the whole thing. Um, and, you know, in the 12 steps, it talks about God as you understand God. And I
Mhm.
was for certain understanding God, you
Uh-huh.
know, and so this is another way of looking at that higher power and how you structure your life in a way that makes sense. So it was very appealing to me. And
Did you go through the foundations or the
yeah,
practitioners groups and
yeah.
all of that? What year did you come along to the center?
Oh, I don't know. It's been maybe, oh, it's over 10.
Uh-huh.
Have to look and see.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, when I joined the center and had to do the precepts, I was a teacher at that time too, and I practiced my precepts in the classroom, just as you're talking about the 12 steps you practice while being a principal. For
Uh-huh.
me, the precepts just unfolded in the classroom, and I could watch myself very closely.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's sort of like, oh, that's how you live life. Oh, that's what you do. That's the secret. And
Yeah,
it was like, you know, instructions, and you could follow the instructions, and guess what? You got successful.
yeah,
You know, it was
yeah,
such a relief because
yeah.
I
Such.
always felt like somebody else had the instruction manual, but I didn't get it when I went out the door. You know, so discovering that really made a difference in my life.
Did you always have a calling towards spirituality?
Um, yeah, I don't know. Yes, I did. You know, I think that I was all pretty traditional when I was growing up, you know,
Sure.
but I was always curious,
Yeah.
and I got drawn into poetry writing, and
Oh, uh-huh.
just made me, you know, wonder about the world and to savor it and say thank you.
Yeah. That curiosity, and I know you mention it also in the book that you just wrote, but that curiosity, I always think of it as divine curiosity because it leads, I mean, we feel a need for something, and that curiosity to understand, to discover, drives us forward in search.
Yes,
Yeah. Hmm.
it certainly was true in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have written, I looked at your latest book, but I also noticed in 2013 you put out My Little Book of Flowers. In 2015, A Year of Daily Gratitude Sketches. And I do recall these on Facebook because every day you would put those up. And that was so, you know, for you, that was a practice. And then for we, the viewers, it was also a practice in receiving your creative expression each day. And then in 2022, just last year, Lean into Uncertainty is the book that you put out. And I think you're still adding to it. Is that right?
That's correct. Every time
Okay.
I kind of run into a corner or something, one of my friends is very graciously says, "Another chapter."
Well, the book starts with this quote: lean into, to take on or embrace something difficult or unpleasant, usually through determination or perseverance, to find a way to benefit from or alleviate the harm of risk, uncertainty, and difficult situations. So that's a quote from a dictionary, and you wrote your dictionary underneath it as kind of generic dictionary definitions. Why did you choose this for your title, Lean into Uncertainty?
Well, I was trying to get at what I meant by leaning into uncertainty. And it's that leaning into thing. Like, when you're learning how to ride a bicycle, unless you have some resistance against something, the air and all that and the balance, you don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And what I discovered is that by embracing the uncertainty, by saying, what could this teach me? What can I do next that makes sense? That's a good thing to do. You become stronger through it, and you become more skilled and less afraid, which is kind of ironic.
And less afraid. That is ironic. And I like that bicycle analogy, that if you don't lean into the bicycle, into your fear of riding it the first time, you don't go anywhere. You just sit still. Everybody's racing by
Or
you.
fall over.
Or you fall over. And we probably have all done that in childhood, learning to ride a bike and falling over. But you want to do it so badly, you get back up and
Yeah.
ride on. So it is a good title. Let's talk some more about it. When you woke up in a hospital bed on December 12th, 2021, so not long ago, and were told you had just had surgery for a cancerous brain tumor, your response was one of curiosity. So there's that curiosity again. Tell us about that. How can you wake up and be told this? You've just gone through this major surgery, and you're curious. What
Well,
is that?
you wonder, how could that have happened? What, I didn't know that I had brain cancer. That's an interesting kind of thing to have happen. And I don't know, I guess you have some choices. You could either get panicky, and that certainly wouldn't help any. But for me, I was curious about what did that mean. And I knew that I was in a great hospital, so I wasn't too concerned about the health care I was getting. And I figured that we were partners in trying to figure this thing out.
So it sounds like the curiosity is like just right in the balance. It's neither good nor bad. It's just like,
Right.
it's just free of
That's a skill.
yeah. It's just right in the middle, saying, what is this? What has happened here? Without blaming anyone or being afraid. You were just right in the middle of that curiosity. So what was discovered here when you went through all the testing and so on was level 4 glioblastoma. And you talked about, I read this, I don't know if a Facebook post or was it in the book, of how you wound up being sent to the hospital. It had to do with going to a cafe, and there was a young woman there, right, who had previously known you.
Yeah, that was very unusual kind of situation. And I was driving down the street to take my computer and a couple of my iPhone or iPad devices in to have them fixed because they were having problems with getting the commands to work. I couldn't get them to work, and I couldn't figure out why.
Oh,
So I decided that I would take them in, but I knew I needed to call ahead. So I thought, well, I'll just go over to Provisions and call from there, because I had called places from there before.
and that's the cafe, right?
And
Provisions?
that's the cafe.
Yeah.
And so as I was driving down the street, I came upon it's actually a stop sign on a little rising, and to prevent you from driving down the middle of the street. But I don't know whether I couldn't see it right or what, but I ended up running into it, and it popped my tire.
It
So
popped your tire. Oh, wow.
so I thought, well, okay, I can get over to the parking lot just across from Provisions, and I can go in there. So that's what I did. And the girl behind the counter said, I don't like the way you're looking. I think you seem really disoriented, and I think you're having a seizure. And I thought, a
How did
seizure?
she know that? I mean, did she have a medical background or
Yeah.
she
And
did?
so she said that she'd like to have me sit down and she'd come around and help me. And I said, okay. So she did. And then she had just finished her second year in nursing. And that
Oh,
was how she recognized the symptoms
oh
of
my
this,
goodness.
because they weren't gross ones like, flailing about or anything.
Yeah.
But so then she said that, well, that she would like to call an ambulance and have them take me to the hospital. She knew that it would be expensive, but would that be okay if she did that? And I said, yes, I think that'd be a good idea. And as it turned out, of course, it was an excellent idea.
But you weren't agitated about it or resisting in any way. You just said,
Well,
okay,
it was the next thing to do.
next thing to do. Wow. I
And
mean, that
she
sounds
was a
so
person who
unburdened in a way. Just,
also had gone to the Center for Sacred Sciences, so I knew her through that also. And it turned out that she'd actually been a student at one of the schools where I had worked, and we knew each other through that. So that was kind of funny.
so you were her principal at one time?
Yes,
That's interesting karma, how that comes around.
yes,
And she just
yeah.
happened to be the one who had nursing
That
training that could
certainly,
recognize.
certainly made my eyes open wide. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I like the terms divine orchestration. Sometimes it just seems to be, wow, divinely orchestrated and
Yeah.
uh,
So my job was to
synchronistic.
lean back and follow directions. That's what I figured.
So in your book, Lean into Uncertainty, you brought up the serenity prayer in talking about your acceptance. So that would come from AA, right?
Right.
Can you tell us how it relates to this, the serenity prayer itself? And some of us may not be familiar with it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think that you could live your life if you just lived it by the serenity prayer. Grant me what is it? The serenity to accept the things I cannot. I can't even remember how it goes now.
Yeah, I don't have it in here in front of me, but grant me the serenity to, is it accept the things I cannot change?
Right, right. And that was, it was pretty clear what I couldn't change at that point.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I just had to relax and do the next right thing.
And
The
do the
next
next right
immediate
thing.
thing. And and
Wow.
and then I had to turn it over to a power higher than myself.
Yeah.
And for me at that point, I figured that the doctors were definitely a power higher than myself. They certainly knew a great deal more about what was going on than I did,
Yeah.
and that I might be better off if I just followed their suggestions.
Hmm.
And so that's what I did.
Some of us, we imagine, what if this happened to me? And we imagine ourselves like hysterical and flailing around and, how can this happen to me? But for you, it seems like the exact opposite. It's like your curiosity arose and then you just went with the flow. And is this true? The next thing is the next thing.
Yeah. And then the next thing for me was waking up in the hospital bed, being
Yeah.
told that I'd had surgery to take out a cancerous tumor.
Yeah.
And that stunned me
Yeah.
because I had
Yeah.
no idea that I had a cancerous tumor. I had no idea that I've been having seizures, because
Mhm.
my idea of seizures is very different from how I experienced it.
Yeah. 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 Was this anything that was in your family already? Had anyone else had tumors in the brain, or not
No,
that you know of, or was
I don't know.
total shock? Yeah.
Yeah,
So you were stunned for a while
yeah,
with that.
yeah.
You endured chemotherapy and radiation treatments. What sort of thoughts did you have at that time? Because I did see in your book a lot of photographs, like this headgear you had to wear during radiation and so on. What were your thoughts like during all of that? Were you still just curious and open?
Oh, yeah. Well, I never had radiation or or anything like that, so I was curious to know what it would be like. And and they told me, here's how people have experienced it and all that, but in fact, I experienced it very differently. I didn't have any side effects, not even to the other treatments that came with it.
No side effects.
Mm,
No nausea.
no nausea,
No hair falling out.
had a little bit of hair falling out, but
A
not
little
very much.
bit. Yeah. Well, that's amazing. No, no side effects.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
Yeah.
That was a nice surprise.
What's that?
It was a nice surprise.
Yeah, that's a nice surprise. Wow. Um, you had to ask for help. You talk about this in your book, having to ask people to help, and you do describe lots of people coming, with food and wanting to help, and you had to sort of say, wait, hold off, it's too much right now. Can you tell
Yeah,
us about that whole episode?
sure. I think for any of us who have lived on our own, who have been responsible for ourselves, and it's our independence is really one of the main things that has us go on and on. And we're accustomed to doing that and proud of doing that. And for somebody to come in and rescue us, it's kind of like, thank you very much. I can do this myself.
Yeah,
And so it was difficult for me to let other people help me. And it was even more difficult for me to ask for someone's help.
because
Uh,
sometimes you really needed it. You needed someone
I did, yeah.
there. Yeah.
One of the first things that happened was that I needed to have someone make meals for me.
Hmm.
And the interesting thing is that I just put it out on I guess I put it out on Facebook in one of my groups that I belong to, a couple of groups, and said, here's what I need, and here's the calendar. And my gosh, people just fell out of the sky. I couldn't get over it. It just floored me. And I didn't know I had so many friends who were such great cooks.
Wow, that's a great thing to discover.
It was a wonderful thing to discover.
Another lucky turn of events.
Indeed.
That's, yeah, it's like a embarrassment of riches when they all come bringing food for you.
Well, and it goes both ways too. One of my friends, when I called her to tell her that I didn't need to have meals delivered anymore, that I was feeling kind of guilty about it because I was able to get up and get about, and I figured there are other people who needed meals more than I did, even though I really appreciated them.
Yeah.
And she said, well, what will I do now to feel like I'm worthwhile?
It's true that we people often take that on because it makes us feel good, to help somebody else. We feel good, so we don't
It
want you to
really
take
did
it
go both
away.
ways. So that was nice. But I said, I can't be sick just so you feel better about
Yeah.
yourself.
Well, that took a lot of awareness. How did she take that? She accept?
Laughed.
She just laughed. You wrote in your book that sketching has remained a spiritual practice.
Oh,
And
yes.
earlier I did mention that sketch a day gratitude practice that you did. And that's definitely a daily practice. How is it spiritual? And how did you use that as a spiritual practice?
Oh, that's a great question. Thanks. Um, well, one of the things I did when I made my commitment to doing the spiritual sketch of what I was grateful for
Yeah.
was that every day I would look for, well, what makes me grateful? What pleases me? What entices me? What intrigues me? What do I really like about the shape of something? And so every day it was a search for what I was grateful for, what fed my soul,
Yeah.
whether it was the way two huckleberry leaves, interspiced, or whether it was the shape of a tree against the sky.
Hmm.
And so every day was different because I was looking for something different every day. And that practice changed the way I think and the way I respond to things, because
Wow.
I was looking for things to be grateful for. And they're definitely out there.
And
You
you
know,
could see them everywhere. I mean, you
yeah,
did one every day, so it's like you could see it.
yes,
I think I know what you mean because I do photography, and sometimes I just see it everywhere. What I want to photograph, it's like
uh-huh.
this mind opens up and it's there. So with gratitude, you're seeing the image that you wanted to sketch. I mean, you felt gratitude when you.
I felt like it was a gift being given to me,
Yeah.
and so my sketching was an active way to say thank you. I see this. I see the way this limb is against this other one, and what pattern is following. I see that. Thank you. And
Beautiful.
it changed the way I saw the world.
And still, yeah.
Well, and people have said that they see that in my behavior too, which is nice. That they
Yeah.
see that I look for positive things.
So here's a hard question. So we look at, I mean, I ask this because of photography, I do photography, but we look out and we see in the world all these intricate beauties, and we translate that into our art. What about on the inside? When you look inside, do you also see all those things that bring gratitude for you?
Mhm. Well, there's a good old gratitude list, you can always do that.
Keep a gratitude
I
list.
have friends who do a gratitude list every day.
Yeah,
That thing can get long.
you
The
bet.
thing I like about sketching rather than just making the list is that in sketching, you're really paying attention to what are the pieces that go into this that make it
Yeah,
so beautiful.
yeah.
So I really recommend sketching as a method to get into it.
Well, while you were receiving treatments, cancer treatments, you went on a sketch trip to Taos, New Mexico, and you stayed at the Mabel Dodge Lujan house, which I have always wanted to visit.
It's
I wanted to go
fascinating.
there. I've never been. But you went there with a group, a sketch group,
My
and
sketch buddies, yeah.
did you have trials and triumphs while you were there? Was it good and bad?
Oh, sure. As always, there'll be things that don't quite go right and other things that, exceed your expectations. And
Yeah, yeah.
and again, if you consider it a gift that you're there, it changes your attitude about things. And so you're able to take the bumps and ups and downs with a little more equanimity and a little more faith that there'll be a way to figure it out.
I think I'm getting what you're saying about equanimity and meeting each moment, whether it appears like a good moment or a bad moment, meeting it with curiosity and gratitude. It's that all of this
Well, it's just
experience
like
is a
when
gift.
I looked up leaning into, because I was really, that was the phrase I wanted because I knew what I meant. I knew how it felt, but I'd never seen it really defined before. And so that was an interesting thing to look up and follow that thing back to lean
Mhm.
into. What does that mean in practical terms? What would you be doing if you were leaning into something?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like, I can't imagine you becoming a figure skater if you didn't learn how to lean into something.
To lean into it.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember riding a motorcycle and having to learn to lean into the turn because, your intuition says, lean the other way so the
Yes.
motorcycle doesn't fall over, but you have to actually lean into it as you go. So it
Yeah.
sounds like maybe that's what you're talking about there, uh,
Yes.
leaning
Very
into
much.
the curves, whatever they are.
Yeah. And it holds you up too.
It holds you up.
Mhm. Mm.
So last May, your test showed that you were in good shape and could go on your sketch trip to Italy. Now, I saw this on Facebook. Oh my gosh, she's going to Italy. I want to go to Italy too. She's going and has had all this chemo and everything. Well, what were your concerns, Jane, when you embarked on the trip? Did you have concerns about your condition or?
Oh, sure.
Yeah?
What if it gets worse? What if there are other consequences?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what if I'm not able to continue on, you know?
Yeah.
But as it turned out, it was fine.
Yeah. I saw a lot of photographs from it. Tell us about what you did in Italy. Where did you go? How many people?
Well, I think there were about 22 of us on the trip,
Oh,
and our teacher had kind of blocked out a pattern or a path to go on so that we would have these various exercises that would build on each other and
uh-huh.
teach us certain techniques. And and it was a nice balance between things and people.
Mm.
So we saw places where there are a lot of people. We saw things there are a lot of things, you know.
Yeah,
But to have the lessons and then go out and apply them was really wonderful. And then to be able
absolutely.
to come back and have time in the studio to further refine it. It's just you know, a trip made in heaven.
That's
A lot of us
wonderful.
really, really appreciated that whole rhythm.
That's wonderful. I enjoyed seeing the photographs.
Thank you.
After Italy, you went on to England. Tell us about England.
Well, my son had the temerity to fall in love with a woman who lives in England, and then
Hmm.
he wanted to go live with her. I couldn't believe that. And he did. So I was coming back through England on my way home. And so I arranged to be able to spend some time with him when I landed there.
Nice.
And that was a fabulous treat. So he was living there with her and with her two young sons and her mother. And I'd never been in that part of England. So that was quite fascinating to me because my ancestors came from that area.
What
And
part of England? What?
Wiltshire,
Wiltshire?
Wiltshire. Uh-huh.
Wiltshire. Okay.
And then they had this whole thing about the white horses of Wiltshire. And the people there at some point started taking these squares or kind of like cobblestones, I guess, of chalk, you know, like the white cliffs of Dover, and put
Yes.
them up on the hill in a pattern. And they did a whole pattern of horses. And
Oh,
nobody quite knows what the purpose of it was, but it really sparks interest in me, you know, seeing it and being curious about what was going on with the horses and where were they going and who did those anyway. And so that led me off in another direction, you know.
I love that kind of thing too. You know, like cave art and petroglyphs and everything always interests me as well.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, sort of like you see it everywhere, you know, art leads you into a spiritual realm.
Hmm.
And that's, I
Art,
think,
art leads you to a spiritual realm. I can't let that go. Let's talk some more about that because I think you're onto something there. Art leads you to a spiritual realm. Tell us your thoughts about it.
well, it leads you to things that are underlying. You know, why would you choose that as an object of, you know? And pretty soon you see, oh, it's all the fruits of spring. That's what's going on here. Oh, that of
Uh-huh.
course you're grateful for that. And isn't that wonderful? And oh my gosh, look at that apple. So it gets you out of your head and into your experiences instead. So you're not just playing head games.
Hmm. Yes, I often think that creativity is a remedy for many of the things we suffer. When we stifle that creativity,
Yes.
it can turn into things we'd rather not have. But just
Uh-huh.
everyday creativity can be such a gift. Let's see now. Last summer, on August 4th, 2022, your MRI showed no evidence of disease. So that's not very long ago. How did you feel then? Did you feel free? Did you feel
Yes, I
complete?
felt excited. I felt
Excited.
vindicated. I thought, okay, I did everything I was supposed to do, and see, you're fine. And I was certainly willing to go right on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then what happened? Tell us what happened after that.
And then what happened was that those darn doctors, they always want more evidence of things, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, they started looking for more evidence of how things were going on inside, and they discovered that there were things going on inside that weren't so wonderful,
Yeah.
and that the cancerous growth tumor was coming back, and that there was indication of some other things that weren't so great.
Mm-hmm.
So that really, I have to admit, that pissed me off.
Okay.
I was such a good girl, you know. I've done all
You
these
did
things.
it all. You did it all right. So you
Yeah, I
felt some
did all these things
anger.
that you do. And
You felt some anger about that.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, well, nobody promised you a rose garden, Henny. And that's true. So, you know, I went back to what I knew worked,
Mm-hmm.
the 12 steps essentially.
Oh, the 12 steps, essentially.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that recovery program works for a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, you say you didn't like the idea of putting up a good fight against cancer. What is your philosophy about it?
Well, I felt putting up a fight means you're making the other person the antagonist
Yeah.
or the other force, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you know, all of my professional life, I've been working on how to be a collaborator, how to be in partnership with somebody to solve a problem. And it didn't feel good to be antagonistic about it, because then I felt like I was fighting with my own body, you know.
Yeah.
So you know, I don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't expect to get out of this thing scot-free,
Mm-hmm.
but I certainly feel better about things,
Yeah.
following the 12-step program.
Well, recently you had what I called a living wake at the Center for Sacred Sciences. But somebody called it a gratitude ceremony. I had several
Gratitude
names.
celebration, yeah.
And I zoomed in for the first half of it, and I was just wondering, because I was seeing you there while people were talking about you, your sons were talking about you. What was going through your mind at that time?
I was so glad I did it, you know, because the
Mhm.
people I invited to this party were people who I had real vivid memories of and
Yeah,
who were important to me at that particular time in my life. And, you know, there are people that you wonder, how did they think about me? What's their opinion of me? And it was a chance for them to tell me
yeah.
and for me to listen and to learn from that. And it was
Wow.
very heartwarming. And it gave me a lot of encouragement to go forward.
Hmm. Forward with the unknown, right?
Yep.
We don't know. What
Nope.
did it teach you, though? You said it taught you something. What did it teach you?
Well, it taught me that it's okay to open up and to
Yeah.
let people in,
Hmm.
you know, and to to be appreciative,
Hmm.
because that's what it made me. It was even more appreciative for the
Yeah.
people that I worked with, for people I grew up with,
Yeah.
for my teachers, for my neighbors, and for my students.
Yes. Yes, I heard at least one student who's now your neighbor across the road. I heard one student speak. I think that's really wonderful that from all the aspects of your life, people came forward to celebrate you. And, you know, I think some of us think, oh, when I die, no one will come to my funeral or no one will remember me or something. We have these weird thoughts. But in this case,
Well, this is
you took
recommend
control.
a celebration, yeah, because this was great. Plus, talk about good food. Wow.
I missed out on that since I zoomed in.
Magnificent. Yeah.
There were a lot of tears there. I saw, you know, people have a lot of feelings. Um, do you have emotional, I mean, do you feel sad about potentially leaving this life soon? Or how do you feel about
You know,
those?
I'm not wild about leaving. I
Yeah.
like being here.
Yeah.
And
And
There's
you're
some
so
things
loved, Jane.
I haven't
You're,
done yet. You know, and there's places I'd like to go and some people I like to talk to and, you know, things like that. So you know, I still have things to do here,
yeah,
but I'm getting more accepting of it's going to be fine. You
yeah,
know, no matter what, it's going to be fine.
yeah.
And that I
Beautiful.
will be taken care of and that I am loved. Now that's a doozy to try to accept.
Yeah, you are loved. You are loved. And that was really displayed on that day
Mm,
at the center. And I'm sure still you're getting a lot of outpouring from people also
yeah,
because you know a lot of people. I mean,
right.
you have a lot of
Yeah,
friends, I noticed.
yeah, yeah, I've noticed that too.
That's great. I mean, it just shows that your life has been very much open to being of
Yeah,
service to others, and you have inspired a lot of people
I
in,
think a lot of us have done things that are worthy of being proud of, but you know, you get this thing about, you know, you're not supposed to flaunt yourself and not supposed to think you're better than others and all that sort of thing.
yeah,
And so we miss out on hearing how much people appreciate it.
yeah,
I'm really glad that I opened the door for people to tell me that
yeah.
because it feels really good.
Often I think we have a big shield up because we're afraid people will say bad things about us, and so we kind of hide a little bit. And in this case, you were like throwing open the doors, and you're still throwing open the doors and letting it all come in. Would you say that's true?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
very inspiring. In
Thank
your
you.
book, you said you wrote that you wrote that you wish you could talk to your mother now. Your mother's name was Dorothy, and I couldn't get the last name. Was it Bosco? What was
That
your
was
mother?
her maiden name,
Bosco? Uh-huh. Um,
Dorothy
if
Bosco Lane.
if you could talk to her now, what would you say? What would you ask?
Well, she was an artist. And so there's always things in that realm that you want to know, you know, how did you do that?
Hmm.
Why does it look like this? What did you do? And so there's that, but it's beyond that too. It's well, what did you feel like when you got your um, the doctor's diagnosis?
Yeah.
You know, how did you resolve that issue with your sister? You know,
Hmm.
so there are real life things I want to know from her,
Yeah.
and there's no way for me to know now except
Yeah.
to look and think about it.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, there's things that I like her input on.
I bet.
But now I just have to, knowing her values, knowing how she comported herself in her own life, you know,
Hmm.
extrapolate. Oh, here's the advice she would give me. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
so
Do you, well, maybe I'm going a little too far in asking this, but do you feel her nearer to you now? I mean, um, do you feel her presence nearer to you, or they're just the same?
yes, I do at various times more than others, and in regard to different things.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mm, you know, I think, oh, that's how you must have felt, or that's why you said that. You know, you have a different perspective on things.
Yes. Yes. And I can feel, I mean, the way you talk about her, her energy had such an influence on you in art and in, just the way you live your life and so on. And those questions that we want to pose, to our parent once they're gone, it's so poignant. But somehow we can answer it ourselves because we're living it too. We live it, and we have
Yes.
pretty good imaginations.
Well, you know, I mean, when you've lived with your parents as long as you know pretty much what their values are
Hmm.
and how they would have reacted to something or thought. And so, you know, if you just give yourself the time to think about it, and to pause,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, the answer comes.
Now you have two loving sons and other family, but your two loving sons were pretty prominent at the Living Wake. And I felt so happy that they were there, and one of them is staying with you now. Can you talk anything about your sons and your relationship with them?
Well, I feel very proud of how supportive they've been
Yeah,
and how helpful they are. And they've reflected on, some of their ancestors and what they have and haven't done
yeah,
in the past and what they might want to do now. And it's I'm very proud of the fact that they become so reflective
yeah,
and what can I do to be helpful?
yeah. That's great. That's great. So, we're going close to 1 hour now, but I wanted to ask you if you have any advice for any of us. What advice do you have for us? You're going through this. Um, I don't want to say it's a difficult time because you are very graceful in the way that you are confronting this with curiosity and gratitude. What advice can you give us, the rest of us listening in here?
Well, my first advice is you don't have to do it alone,
Mhm.
and you can seek out sources of support and help
Mhm.
and be curious about them
Mhm.
and see what you can take in.
Mhm.
And just like I've always kind of been curious, I have arthritis in my hands, and I had wondered what the CBD ointment would do, if that would help or not. And at one point, I had an opportunity to try it. And my son said, "Well, what do you think about it, Mom?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I always go to sleep before I feel anything." He said, "Huh." So that was my answer, of course.
Mhm. Mhm.
Oh, it works.
I think it's good advice to remember that we're not alone because we do, feel so much separation from each other, like we're stuck in our little lives and our little
Yeah,
selves, and we forget that we're part of this whole big web. Um,
exactly.
and what affects one affects the other in some way.
Yeah. Well, and it's amazing how willing people are to help if you ask them.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah,
think it's a good idea to ask them rather than hope it falls out of the sky on you,
yeah.
because what happens with that one is that then you feel resentful.
Hmm.
You know, I could do it myself,
Hmm.
and I'm really bad at that.
Yeah,
To ask for help is a really, I mean, it's sort of like admitting you can't do it.
yeah.
No, but it's also admitting that you're a fallible human being
Exactly.
and how grateful you can be for getting love and help.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's a nice give and take.
Yeah. Life is give and take. Anything else, especially from a spiritual practitioner's point of view, advice you would give any of
I'm
us?
glad that I had a spiritual practice to fall back on.
Hmm.
I'm really grateful that I had had experience in meditation because that really saw me through the MRIs and things like that. When you had to be
Oh,
quiet, and this machine was going around you and whirling and making noise, you could just, relax into a meditation and get through the whole thing.
yeah,
So, I think that it's not a bad thing to have a spiritual practice,
yeah,
whatever it is.
yeah, yeah. Great. Is there anything that I've left out that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I think you've covered it pretty well.
Well, I've enjoyed talking with you, Jane. I feel uplifted by the things that you've said. I think you're very inspirational to a lot of people. And, anything that you can share with us through your drawing, through writing, through talking like this or so on, I think is a great gift that you give us.
It feels good to be give back.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
good. I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a little bow.
Mhm.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you.